Thank you for everyone for dropping in for our wonderful panel this afternoon. I am super thrilled to have this group of podcasters here today. They're all amazing people and friends of mine, and none of them are shy. And so, that's a good thing. So anyway,
they couldn't be if they're friends of yours.
We are what?
They couldn't be if they're friends of yours.
That's true. Yeah. That's very true. Because they have to be able to cut in and get room to talk. So anyway, this is the Heroes of the Mic podcasting panel. So this is podcasting and not pod racing. So if you're looking for pod racing, you're looking for Tatooine. So anyway,
where do we go? How do we get there?
With podcasting, so for those of you who might have actually wandered in because it's nice and cool in here and don't know what podcasting is, generally speaking, it's a fairly broad spectrum. It can be people who are doing interview shows and talking to other people, people who are producing radio dramas like I am myself. Some people are doing other kind of incredible things, and so I'm going to let each one of them kind of talk about what their shows are and introduce themselves. And so just give us the real kind of quick, five and dime thing about who you are and what your podcast is.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Malia Miglino, and it's not a podcast, it's a show. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I can pretend it's a podcast, but it's actually not. It's called Macabre Mondays, and basically the premise of my show is kind of like Drunk History meets Elvira a little bit. I am obsessed with history, especially the darker side of history. So the show is all about featuring a historic location where either a heinous crime has been committed, possibly, maybe, and is maybe haunted. And so I do a crap ton of research, and I kind of try to debunk, are there actually things happening here? Is there not? Is there history to back it up? And I drink a lot of wine while I talk about it, because I think that's a little bit fun, right? Like make it a little bit different. And sometimes I do get to interview experts of the locations that I go to, which is fantastic. So that's my little spiel.
So I guess the first thing I'm going to ask is just the simple thing is, so why the show that you're doing? All right, how about you, Malia? How about your show?
So it's an odd way this began. So I was an odd child, and I've always had an obsession with all things dark, I guess. I came from a very open-minded family, a lot of paranormal believers. So it was just something that I kind of grew up with. And I was always fascinated by serial killers, and if I saw a creepy house, I'd be like, what happened in that house? I was just always plagued by this curiosity of what happened where? And I was a frustrated actor, and I wasn't getting cast in anything, and I was pissed. And a friend of mine had the idea of why don't you start your own web series? Because I was, I'm always telling my friends these facts they don't care about because they're not as interested in the things that I'm interested in, but I have to purge it because I'm so excited. And so she had this idea of do a simple little web series for each day of the week. And my first idea was I could do something on Mondays, and I'll call it Macabre Mondays. Oh, how clever. And so I started filming with my iPhone, actually, because that's all I had access to.
And you rock.
No, thank you. And I just, I'd pick a location, and I have done a lot of, very well-known historical locations that everybody will find in the normal, ghost hunter shows. But I really wanted to tackle, the stories of the weird houses down the street, and I want to know, why does this place feel inherently creepy to me? So I would pick a location, I would research it, I'd go to the libraries, because half these places you can't find anything on the internet about it. And then it was incredible, because you start rabbit holing, and I would find out that even if something creepy didn't happen in the house per se, by the people that lived there, the architect might have had this crazy backstory, and then during the time of building the house, it was going through something crazy. So then it starts becoming the story of this architect, and not necessarily just the house. And it was it's like a treasure hunt each time I pick a location. And so I started uploading them, and I think I decided to drink a lot of wine because I wanted to...
You wanted to drink wine?
I wanted to drink wine.
Just the cherry on top.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And it was honestly recording yourself, because I'm doing it all myself, it's very uncomfortable. And it was hard because I didn't have the smart idea to write a script, like probably a lot of you guys actually think to at least have a beat script. I didn't do that. I just had notes. And I thought, I can deliver this eloquently. I couldn't. And it helped drinking wine because if I flubbed something, it's like, oh, haha, I'm drunk. So it helped. And then oddly, as a surprise, I'm sure we all feel, people started liking it. And I was shocked because it's like just me sitting in my dining room talking about this stuff, and 3 seasons later, I have a fun little community of creeps that I love dearly, and I love it. Like, it's intoxicating. It's like when it's your passion and it's exciting, and you find your community of people that are also excited when you thought you were this freak your whole life. It's great.
Can I, real quick, is this all the locations you do? Are they in a given area, around home, or do you get out and go into other?
I just did Sydney, Australia.
Oh, okay.
So I did a 5-part series on Australia, and I would love to take it. Yeah, I'd love to take it international for sure.
Okay.
One other thing I wanted to ask is, though, people think that, okay, I just sit down in front of a mic and I just start talking, but there's obviously a lot more work involved with that. So what would you say has been the biggest challenge for your program?
I think for me, it's a little bit different since I do work in a video format, but it's the same thing. It's the prep, it's the time, and when you're doing it all yourself, it's, people have always suggested to me to turn my show into a podcast, and I haven't done it just because I've done so many locations and I feel like I've committed to this medium. I'm just sticking with it, but for me, it's always been locations because I'm not just talking about my research of the locations. I am going there and I'm filming there. Problem is they don't always want me to film there. So you have to get creative ways to get in these locations. So sometimes you go to weird measures. But anyways, it's a lot of time. And the editing and the social media, all of that is a lot of time. I think one episode took me 40 hours to edit, and it was just grueling. But I do have to say, I was just interviewed on a couple podcasts for the first time, and I've never worked in that medium before. And I did not realize how difficult it was because I'm a person that sits in front of a camera all the time. So I can, I can communicate with my face, even if I'm not saying words. It's like, oh no, I really have to communicate here. And then I think the strangest thing for me was realizing I have way more opinions on things than I thought I was. Like it's so easy to talk. Like you don't think it is, but you put a mic in front of you, and once you get used to it, it's just like, oh yeah, I have all these thoughts, and they're just coming out, and then it's been 2 hours, and you're like, how did it happen?
It's just a brain dump.
Well, that's probably better than if you got in front and you just didn't say anything. Those are the two kind of people that get on for the first time of our podcast. It's the ones that, hey, I'll take somebody who just keep talking. That's fine. I'll sit in the back, give me some time to say. But then there's the people that just like, hey, so what do you think of this? I don't like it.
Yes. And you're already down the path on camera. It's probably a good bet that you're going to be on that path without a camera. Yeah.
That's it?
That's it.
So we've talked about the hard stuff. So let's talk about, when you're running your shows, all of you have had a moment where there was something that happened on your podcast, either in the process of making it or you had a special guest or something along those lines. Tell me about your best moment so far with your podcast.
I think for me, for my season 3 opening episode, I took on the biggest thing that I've taken on yet. It was the first time I actually had a crew help me do it. And I did an episode on the St. Francis Dam disaster. And it was something I was incredibly passionate about because this is a horrible disaster where hundreds upon hundreds of people had died, and nobody talks about it because it was essentially written out of history because of the whole Mulholland everything. And I got in contact with the guy they called the Dam Man, who's the only guy that gives a tour of the dam site, and he was so excited to be on the show. And we had the interview in the cafe that is the only place that's kind of turned itself into a museum about this disaster, up in the canyon, totally tucked away. And it was just amazing to sit there and talk with this guy who was so passionate and so knowledgeable about it. And I was so flattered that he thought my show was a good enough platform to actually be on, talk about it. And then once I released the episode, I got all of these messages from people from the neighborhood, from the canyons, thanking me for talking about this disaster because nobody is. And it was just this moment of, for me, it really comes down to the fact that yes, I find light in dark situations, and I make it fun, I make it funny. But for me, the driving force is I have a deep, deep fear of our mortality. And I think about telling these people stories that you might not have known as a way to keep them alive. And it's very important to me. So to know that people appreciated that, it just, it was everything to me. It was a highlight for sure.
That's in LA?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
In somewhere in the canyon?
Yep. San Francisco. Yep. Up by Santa Clarita.
Okay.
Did you feel creepy when you were in the cafe or?
No, not the cafe. It's a really warm place, actually. It's a very inviting place. They just put a pizza oven in, so check it out.
Really quickly, if we can go down the panel here, and we're going to start with you, so for any folks that we have in the audience that are trying to kind of create their own podcast, what is a piece of advice that you might give to someone that you wish somebody had told you about, or something that you just otherwise been aware of whenever you got started with your podcast?
I would say the exact same thing, except for I would add also, once the audience starts growing, to listen to your audience. Yeah. And if they keep repeatedly asking for a specific thing, like, listen to that,
There's that responsibility thing.
Yeah,
again.
exactly. Like, you started it out for you, but now you're taking care of these babies now, and the babies want these things. So, give it to the babies. That was weird, but I'll stick with it.
All right.
Give to the babies.
Give it to the babies.
All right. David?
Yeah, hopefully you like the babies.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed.